So the other day on stream, I saw an article from VGC where they described how they had found a work-in-progress build of Concord that had leaked somewhere on the internet. They didn't say where or provide any info, but that they had actually downloaded it, installed it, and gotten it to boot up and everything. And they shared some basic screenshots and everything, but I thought it was like interesting, but I was like, this is Concord we're talking about. We need to actually find this. So I did some digging, I did a lot of Googling and investigating, and yeah, I got it running. Concord's not dead, folks. It's still here. Sort of. Not really. It's mostly dead, but let me share this with you because it's kind of crazy.
But first, a quick thank you to the sponsor of this video. I want to say thank you for Samsung for sponsoring the following segment of this video and for providing some of the coolest gaming tech I think I've seen in a very, very long time. It's the monitor I'm playing on, the Samsung Odyssey 3D. You see, the Samsung Odyssey 3D is a 3D 4K gaming monitor that allows you to play games in 3 dimensions without glasses. The monitor actually tracks my eyes and the position they are in 3D space, which is why the camera moves when I move my head, and it actually assigns one of those versions of the footage to my right eye and the other to my left with the millions upon millions of pixels that are on this display, meaning that I don't need 3D glasses. I can move around and peek behind the character and he actually looks like he's popping out. It's actual magic, and that's what I love about cutting edge tech. So if you're interested in the Samsung Odyssey 3D, I recommend you check it out at the link in the description box below or in the pinned comment. And thank you to Samsung for sponsoring this segment. So in this article from VGC, they describe how they found a work in progress build called FW Chaos, which was uploaded over the weekend and claims to be dated from November of 2023. They describe how they downloaded it and can confirm that it was authentic, but there's not much more than that. They describe it kind of in text form and there's some basic screenshots. But I was like, fam, this is Concord we're talking about. We gotta go all out. I can't just look at the article and assume what they're saying is true. I wanna see it for myself. So I went through some rabbit holes. I did a lot of searching, went on to a fair number of forums, and was eventually able to track down a post describing where it was initially posted for download. It was eventually taken down. However, some very resourceful people put and backed up this work in progress build of Concord that was probably leaked by a developer, and they uploaded it to the Internet Archive, which is awesome. That's way easier. I wish I had known that going in. But after finding that backup, you can see that it has been uploaded and it is in fact dated November 14th of 2023 as its official publication date. However, if you try to run that version of the build, it just doesn't do anything. And it's because it is locked away because it was a development build. So the only way to get into it is with a specific engine layout or INI file that has the specific rules and commands to override all of these specific instructions that typically would keep it locked down. And what's crazy is that this build leaked with that INI file provided, which really makes me think this was leaked by a developer on Concord who probably had this build like on a work laptop or a thumb drive or something, and they decided to upload it to the internet so that Concord in one shape or another could continue to live on. And when you look at this file that they provided, I mean, I don't know a lot of like coding. I don't know a lot of this stuff myself, but it doesn't seem like something you're just gonna throw together and guesstimate by, especially some of these very specific scripts that they run at the end of the INI file. So once you get all of this hooked up and you set it up, you can in fact boot into Concord. It has audio. It has the character select screen. And, you know, as you can see, there's some artifacting and stuff because, again, this is dated roughly 9 months before the final launch version of the game. But you can see some of our favorite characters. Of course, this is Mushroom Girl or guy, I'm not sure. And it's like a work in progress model, not a finalized model. And some of them look way more finished than others. Obviously, some of them have like different color variants than what we would see in the final game for their starting skins and things like that. Some of them are very, very basic, but it is working. Now, if you're wondering whether or not you can actually play like matches, no. As far as I am aware, you're not able to do that. All of the UI elements remain static, so there's no way to like adjust any of this stuff. It also says where's werewolf, party member invited. I don't know who that is, but it's stuck on the screen. So I'm thinking maybe that was like another developer or something. I have no idea. But if we go here, you can see there's like the galactic guide. I can click on it. It loads for a second. It tries. It's working, but I don't think anything's happening. Oh God. Oh, maybe something's happening. Boom, there you go. And now you can see it's actually running and it looks, ooh, this is cool. I can try to like wiggle around with WASD, but the commands are like really choppy and stuff. But this was going to be used to like show different planets and stuff in the game and different things. Yeah, missing image. You can see there's a lot of placeholders because of course this was pretty early on in the process for building out final like executables for the game. Planet body, more missing images, missing image, all of this. But it is technically working. You can explore it, which is kind of cool. There, of course, is still the store page. And if you try to click on that, it just doesn't do anything. It doesn't have anything. As you can see, there is upcoming server maintenance on Monday. So we can rest assured there that they are working on it, I guess. If you go to like the job board, you can see there's dailies and like placeholders here that are just really basic progression stuff with placeholder text still outlined there, seasonal stuff with placeholder basic text there as well. Crew and like similar thing. Like it's all very much work in progress. I think this was a build that they had put together at some point just to kind of have broad strokes stuff laid out just to get a feeling for how the game would look and run. Now, as part of this whole thing, I did find out that there is a small Discord community of hardcore Concord fans and also people just fascinated by the whole thing that have been trying to dig into this development build of the game. And when they dug into it and, you know, using a lot more knowledge of how to manipulate the code than me, they're able to get into like work in progress dev rooms and find this same character in a like early work in progress state that is labeled grappler. And you can see the renegade is over there. You can see we have our sniper character over there. Lennox has his own spot. So they've been able to actually get into the game a little bit deeper and find all of these cool little trinkets and snippets. And I don't remember this dude, but they do also have character art for him that they were working on at some point, and it looks like they officially released it. I don't know where this came from, but there's a lot of fun little tidbits in here. It is funny that like even these work in progress characters are really bland and like really not that interesting, but you know, that's just, you know, the age old story of Concord, I guess. And in this same server, there are people that have been able to get deeper once again into the dev build to find like testing rooms that they had where you can see like clear pets, death, health, and I think pets was like the development term for like status effects and things. I don't know. But role perks, you can go and acquire each of those before running into the test room. Volume tests, you can see they have correction something listed there. They have different server versions. I don't know if this is something that is older or if this is from this specific build. I don't know. But this group of pretty hardcore dedicated Concord people have been doing a lot of work on this, trying to get it at least working in a somewhat familiar state, getting it to the point where it can at least function in broad strokes again. And, you know, I don't know if that'll ever happen or if it will ever actually amount to anything, because realistically, if they ever got it working again, I would imagine PlayStation will just swoop in and shut it down, send them a cease and desist and move on from there. But at this point, it's basically just a modding team that's kind of messing around with it, seeing if they can get it working for like private matches just for the fun of it. And it is funny that like they could barely scrape together a few hundred people at a time on Steam when it launched, but now there still are dedicated people that are interested in it, and maybe not to like play it in any sort of competitive sense, but they are interested in it kind of as a morbid fascination, as a piece of gaming history. And it brings me to another point, which is that at this point, it's been approaching a year since the catastrophic launch of Concord. And yet people still talk about it. You still clicked on this video because you're still kind of curious about what's going on with all of this. And, you know, somebody on stream asked if this is because like the game was actually really good and we regret it like failing, or if it's just become a meme at this point, or if it really was so bad that it actually deserves to be remembered so often. And I think it's maybe a little bit of everything. Like Concord at its core was not a terrible game. And I can say that as somebody that actually played it. I was one of the few people that actually bought the game, downloaded it, and played it on stream for hours. And having done that, I can say that it was a solid game, a solid first-person shooter with, you know, some pretty basic game modes, but it wasn't terrible, it wasn't bad, it wasn't a broken, buggy disaster of a game or anything. It just was unremarkable and really uninspired in my opinion, and it was at its core a game nobody wanted. But in the gaming space, a lot of games are made or broken, not necessarily just on what they are, but also on what they represent to the broader gaming community. And in this case, I think that is largely what happened. The reason why like PlayStation hardcore gamers weren't interested in Concord was because it just wasn't a game they ever were going to be interested in. They just weren't compelled to commit all this time and money to a game that's similar to a lot of other games that have already come out. And they were also frustrated that Sony was putting so much effort, time, and money into a game like this instead of single player games, which have been much more absent, at least it feels that way, in this generation compared to last generation. And then among the players who are interested in first person hero based shooter games, there were already games available for them to play. Games like Overwatch 2 were very popular even back last year before Marvel Rivals launched. And when Marvel Rivals launched, it also exploded in popularity because it had a ton of quality of life features and content that Concord just didn't have. And of course, some people will bring up like the character designs being lame and uninteresting. And I do think that there is an element of truth to that. Like none of these characters are particularly interesting. A lot of them are frankly cringe and look like blueberries. Like I just, Tupperware head, as you can see, there's a lot of these characters that are just kind of lame. You know, they're not particularly cool. And that's a problem when your game is a hero shooter game. If people don't like the heroes, why would they get like invested in it? And you could say, oh, well, you got to start somewhere. Overwatch started with unknown characters and totally fresh. That's true, but it also started a decade ago, you know, and it took years and years and years to build up into what it is. I feel like Concord launched and they expected that kind of reception day one, and they were shocked that people didn't already find the characters super cool and witty and interesting. But it's like, no, you don't get to just get that reaction. You have to build up to it, you know? But don't get me wrong, the design of the characters definitely didn't help or anything. It definitely hurt the game in the long run. And I think part of it also was they set it up in this weird way where they had the cinematic trailer, which people are like, oh, that looks kind of cool. I like the idea of this game. And then it ends up being a hero shooter. And you're like, what are we doing? Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're doing a hero shooter? This doesn't look interesting or particularly interesting as like a single player game, and you're telling me that you've put more effort into this as a hero shooter? Like, it just across the board was marketed really poorly. It was a game nobody really wanted, and then you played it and it was like, yeah, after a few hours I already feel like I've seen everything the game has to offer, which is not great, especially when you compare it to other games that just did this way better, like the Marvel Rivals that came after, and not only had character designs and characters and environments that were really cool and also familiar if you're familiar with Marvel stuff, but also just the complexity of the game was way higher. Lots of synergies, all sorts of crazy quality of life features like game replays, really robust ranked mode, and all sorts of stuff that Concord just didn't have. But at the end of the day, people still talk about Concord because I think it's just a fascinating tale of how quickly and badly things can go when you have people in charge of the company that are not in touch with gamers at all. And that's why I think Concord has been so fascinating for me to cover over the last year, is just because anybody, especially any of you in the comments as well, anybody could have looked at this and said, this is not going to work. Like, this is a bad idea. Let's not put a lot of time and effort and money into this. This is not worth 100 million, much less the alleged 400 million that some people have said this cost to put together. It just across the board was never going to work, I think, anywhere near as well as they needed it to work. You know, if they got this thrown together for 20, 30 million, yeah, they could probably turn a profit on it. Honestly, even though it didn't perform very well, that's not that difficult if you're charging a premium price point for it, especially if you support it for a year or two. You get some, you know, people seeping in over time. They could probably make that money back. But when you're talking about budgets that are as crazy high as this one was rumored to have been, it just is never going to work. The math doesn't math, as it's said. But anyway, I figured I would show you this because it's interesting and I thought it was kind of cool. And I don't know if they'll ever get this running again. I don't know if they'll ever figure it out and find some way to kind of backdoor a way to run this, but you know, it's still cool nonetheless. And I mean, I really do believe it was a Concord dev that decided to put this out there just for the sake of, I guess, preservation of the content. It's cool nonetheless that they did this. I love this kind of lost media thing. So I figured I would share it with you. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. I love you all desperately. And I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.